Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, where we will be talking about what's new in OnBase Studio over the past few releases of OnBase. For some of you who may be new to OnBase Studio is a powerful tool that is used to build, configure, and administer workflow solutions, business process models, capture processes, WorkView applications, and much more. Whether you want to automate a business process or simply model it in clear notation, Studio makes it easy to do this kind of work with its simple but effective user interface. Workflow is a part of OnBase with near limitless potential in its capabilities. As you start to harness its potential and get used to Studio, you will want to expand your skill set and learn to use it more efficiently. In order to do that, we want to provide tips and tricks as well as feature explorations on some of the most powerful and useful components within Studio. In this webinar, we're looking to present some ideas for you on Studio tips and tricks, workflow exploration, optimizing your settings and design features, as well as how to test more efficiently. Again, welcome to today's webinar by the Customer Success team. My name is Nick, and I'm very excited to be able to talk with you all today. I feel like it's been a while. I don't think I've given a webinar for about a year. Anyway, here's a snapshot of our current team. We always want to be able to provide some faces for all those names that you may have worked with. I'm hoping we can get a group photo soon with everyone once all of this craziness blows over. That is 2020. And we can also include our newest team member over on the left there, Billy, who actually helped put together a lot of today's presentation. So for today's agenda, today we will be covering enhancements to OnBase Studio, specifically change tracking features, some expression enhancements in the newer releases, enhancements to the search feature, and enhancements to overall lifecycle design. We'll do an exploration and review of workflow, how you can create a lifecycle and some basic configuring ideas within Studio. And then at the end, we'll touch on some other interesting features. So now for the updates. Let's talk about some improvements that have been made to OnBase Studio recently. While we have maintained the same interface and concepts of the product, there can always be some minor improvements that go a long way for some of our veteran OnBase developers. All right, so first thing is the 64-bit installer. So as you may or may not be aware, Highland has been making an effort to give OnBase the ability to fully utilize 64-bit systems. The new 64-bit installer allows for modern hardware to be utilized more effectively through higher allotment of system memory. You should not run out of memory in Studio when using this 64-bit version, as long as you have enough RAM installed on the workstation. The main benefit of these 64-bit applications, like the updates to the application server and the Unity client, is that it has access to more memory, whereas with the previous 32-bit applications, you could only use a maximum of 4 GB of memory. All right, next, let's talk about one of our newer features in change tracking. As an additional update to the change control features of Studio, it is now easier than ever before to see what configuration changes have been made to your OnBase system. The change tracking utility allows you to search for changes by date, user, configuration item name, and configuration item type. Search results from change control can also be saved in a CSV file format for easy logging and sharing between developers and OnBase admins. Change tracking is important because it allows you to see a log of the changes made to the configuration of your content in Studio for auditing or administration purposes. A full list of types that can be tracked from change control in Studio includes all items configured in Studio, autofill keyword sets, document types, keyword types, and notifications, just to name a few. So let's do a brief demonstration that I recorded a bit earlier. So here we are in OnBase Studio. This is an EP3 virtual machine. I'm going to click the View Changes option in the Change Control window. And from here, we can input a date range where our changes took place. Let's go back a few months and say that I'm looking for all changes made during this past quarter as I'm preparing for a review session with some other developers. Additionally, you can search based on what configuration type the change was, as well as which user made the change. We're going to search for all changes made by the manager group for this example. Here you can see when the change was made, the item that was affected, which user made the change, as well as what type of change it was. Do note that the creation change type is also recorded, as you can see in these results. Moving on, just some brief updates to expressions. There are two notable improvements to writing expressions. You can now make single line as well as multi-line comments. Additionally, the escape regex function was added, which allows you to escape all regular expression characters. And like I said, we can now use single and multi-line comments in our expressions. Here's what single line comments as well as those multi-line comments look like from the expression editor. The single line comments are denoted by the 2 forward slashes. Multi-line comments are denoted by a forward slash and an asterisk to start the comment block and the opposite to end it. If you are unfamiliar with programming, comments are special in that they do not get interpreted by the computer and do not have to adhere to any of the guidelines or syntax of the coding. They are just there to describe what is happening to someone reading the code. Next, let's talk about some enhancements to the search feature. Searching in Studio is a very useful feature, especially if you recycle or use naming variations for common actions like moving a document out of a lifecycle or break processing. There have been enhancements made to finding items for not just workflow items as well. More specifically, searching for items in WorkView now supports these additional items that are below. A notable one is the object headers. This makes looking for specific objects much easier. Again, let's do a brief demonstration here. If you are unfamiliar, let's go to the search menu and the find option. You can open it from here, or we can use the Control and the F key as a shortcut. From the search window, you can search for items by their name. It shows me the available lifecycle or WorkView items to search within. The dependency on another item, which gives me a few more options, such as autofills, portfolios, and some more criteria within Workflow and WorkView. And then lastly, by the ID of the item. And this is probably the most expansive, as I can search for any item that will have an ID associated with it that's stored in the OnBase database. In this example, we're going to search by the dependency of the item. I'm going to narrow the search down by specifying the type to be a component. And we are looking for the hardware assets class that belongs to my help desk WorkView application I've been working on. I'm going to click Find All, and then in the bottom, it's going to show me all of the results. In this case, there's just one, and I can double click that result to go straight to it. Here we found the component we're looking for, and if you've never used the search feature, I highly recommend it, especially if you have a robust environment with a lot of different life cycles or applications that you're trying to manage. And this feature, this one is not the most brand new feature that we're going to be talking about today, but it's definitely something I want to highlight. You can disable life cycles in OnBase Studio. Please note that disabled life cycles are not visible in the client and can't have work items added to them. In the past, you would need to remove your user groups and document types to disable a lifecycle, quote unquote. But perhaps you are merely looking to just shelf the lifecycle briefly while some changes are made in a lower environment, and then you're going to promote those to your production environment. The disable option allows us to simply turn the lifecycle on or off for easier maintenance. And again, I'm just going to go through my login on the demo. I'm going to find the lifecycle that I'm looking to disable for my users in the production environment. If I scroll over to the properties panel and check out the lifecycle so I can make changes, all I need to do now is go to the bottom left of that properties panel and select disable. And this is going to then gray out the lifecycle in the repositories panel on the left here. And it's going to show me that if I do go in to try and make changes at the bottom in the workflow doctor that, hey, this is disabled, your users will not be able to take advantage of any of these changes you're making. So those are some of our quality of life improvements to Studio. The next thing we're going to move into is some workflow. Let me pull up my VM. And I'm going to make a brand new lifecycle. So I'm going to go over to my lifecycle tab and I'm going to choose the lifecycle option. And usually before that, you are going to create a lifecycle, you're going to have some ideas and general knowledge of what you want it to accomplish and what is going to be entailed in that process. The current lifecycle that I'm looking to create is for a ice cream party that I'm planning to do remote for all of my employees. So since we can't get together for our monthly ice cream socials like we all love to do, I'm sure, I want to get some surveys out to everyone. What type of ice cream do you want? And I'm going to compile all those results, and then I'm going to be able to have the ice cream delivered to all my remote employees. That sounds fantastic, right? I'm so excited. All right, so let's call this one ice cream delivery. And then I can choose the type of items that the lifecycle is going to contain. In this case, I'm just going to choose documents, but the amount of items that you can choose your lifecycle to be driven by is increasing with every release of OnBase. So we can use anything from agenda items to even WorkView objects, and we can drive logic behind our WorkView applications here. In this case, I'm just going to choose documents, and I'm going to create it as a Unity lifecycle. And I believe that this option is the default moving forward in OnBase Foundation. And I don't believe that the core lifecycles will be around for much longer. So you're always going to use a Unity lifecycle these days. I'm going to click next. And then it's going to ask me what queues I want in the lifecycle. These are the different steps that my items are going to go through. I always start fresh, and you can add queues as you're going to. This is not the end-all stop for your queues. You can add them at any time, but I'm just going to do them in the order that I had planned to do. So the first one is always going to be some type of system or initial work queue. I'm going to call this one system. And then I want to have a workflow queue for each flavor of ice cream, because what I'm planning to do is I'm going to have all of my employees' forms come into the system queue, and then depending on the flavor they chose, it's going to go to another queue for further processing. So let's start with vanilla, and we'll do chocolate. And then for a few of you out there, I don't know why, we'll go with strawberry. Then I'm going to choose the document type here. I believe I have my form. My ice cream order form, of course. I'm going to add that as the document type that's driving the life cycle. And then I can choose what user groups I want to have access to the lifecycle. As a general rule for myself, I always just choose manager or the administration group that is configuring the lifecycle, because I don't want anyone to really see this yet. I'm building it for the first time, and I'm just going to be doing my own initial testing before I start having more unit testing. Let's add that. Let's click next, and then it's going to give me a summary of everything that's going to be added here. I have my 4 queues. I have the name of the lifecycle, the document type for that lifecycle, and the user group. And then let's click finish. Let's build that out, and then it's going to check out that lifecycle for me, and then it's going to show me all of the different queues. If I did want to add another queue at any time, I can just go to that lifecycle. I can right-click it, click New, and then go to Queue. I'll go right to the bottom, and then I'll call this one Processing. So after I've finished routing through the different flavor queues, it's going to go to this Processing queue. So that is our basic lifecycle configuration. The next thing that I'm going to talk about briefly is how we can design the layout of this. So we have a visual representation that we can always reference while we're in here and configuring. And that can be done right here in this nice graph paper window. You can access this by just right-clicking on your lifecycle and selecting Design. And at the start, all of my queues are going to be piled on top of each other in the top left corner. Generally, I like to just pull all of these out, separate them so I can get a look at everything that I'm working with. And generally what I do is I lay out my queues by the logical flow of them. I like to start from the top left of this screen, and then I like to work my way down towards the bottom right where the lifecycle will end. So my system queue is going to be my first queue, and my processing queue is currently my last queue. I'm going to put my 3 flavor queues all in the same area because they're sort of equal in the process. It's going to just be whatever flavor is listed on the document is going to go to that specific queue once I get that designed. So I have all of my queues spread out. If I go to this editor tab up at the top, I can choose the transition, and I can draw. Oops. Always does that to me. There we go. So I'm going to add a transition to each of my flavor queues. As these are possible options to drive the documents to. And then lastly, those documents are going to go to the processing queue once they're done. And I can do some other editing to make this look nice. If I want to snap them to the center, I could do that. Could align them. I don't like that. And I could also change the color of each of these queues, the font if I wanted to, etc. So again, this is a very useful tool in laying out how you want to visualize and create your workflow. And that way, if you're working with multiple people and configuring of a life cycle, everyone is on the same page of the flow of your life cycle. Next, we're going to move on to some of the interesting features. We've gone through what's been added to Studio over the past few versions, as well as the basics of workflow. We're going to talk about some of those other features in Studio that have existed for a bit, but perhaps you haven't heard of them, and I'm hoping that they can add a lot of value to your experience with this tool. This first one is probably the most powerful and my favorite that I'm really excited to share with you, and that's the item generators feature. The item generator will automatically create documents and Unity forms for testing workflow logic. You can automatically populate keywords and form fields with a constant value, an incremented range of values, or even random values. This allows administrators to quickly produce hundreds or even thousands of documents and Unity forms to more accurately test workflow solutions. Let's bring up my VM again. And let's get out of this designer page. Let's close that. And I'm going to go over to the Home tab, and then there's a section called Item Generation, and I'm going to select the item generators. Now, I'm going to create an item generator for each type of ice cream that I'm going to be testing with. So let's go with vanilla ice cream. And this is going to be a Unity form that I'm having my users fill out. So I'm going to choose forms here, as that's the type of document I'm generating for my testing. Let's go to the form type. And then I'm going to create X number of forms that I'm looking to unit test with. So let's just say 5. From here, I can add all the keywords that are associated with that document. Start with flavor, and then I'm going to give this a constant value since I want this to all be for the same flavor. And if I wanted, I could choose just a incrementing range as a contact, just so I have something that changes with each of my sample documents. So I'll have contact number 1 through contact number 5. I'll click next, and then what form field value should be added to the form. Let's go ahead and add those, and I'm going to do the same thing. Sorry, no, this would be if you were using a document and you wanted the text to show up on that document, and we're not going to be doing that in this case. So I don't need to do anything here. And then it's going to ask how should the items be added to the workflow. And I'm just going to choose add the items to all life cycles associated with them, because I only have the one life cycle for this document type. If I had multiple life cycles, I could choose this option, and then I could go right to the life cycle we're using, and then the queue that I wanted it to go to. And if there was any system work that took place on those life cycles, I could choose to execute that. Or if I wanted to do it myself and see what the outcome was, I could uncheck this. And then the entry to the queue date these items should have, I'm just going to use the current date. I'm not looking to test too much about the specific date of those documents. And then this will give me my finished product. I'll select finish. And then I have my vanilla ice cream item generator. Let's do one more for chocolate. Just going to go through this one a little bit more quickly. just going to put that right in the life cycle and click next. So I now have my item generators created. If I wanted to execute them individually, I could just select them, choose execute, and the documents would be generated and they would move into the lifecycle so I could begin testing them. Additionally, and the reason why I created different item generators is I could group these together in an item generator set. If I wanted to, I could use my ice cream. Add that. And then I could choose a group of them to add. And then I could generate all of the items associated with this item generator set at once. So that's the item generator demo. Again, extremely powerful tool, can help with a lot of unit testing and really pushing your workflows to the limits if you are looking to sort of stress test just how many documents you can push through and process effectively. I highly recommend that you take a look at this tool. Next, we're going to touch briefly on notifications. Notifications configured in the same interface. We have a notifications tab over on our repositories panel where we can look at what we've done previously, what notifications we have stored, and if we want to create new ones. So I am going to go to my notifications tab and I'm going to create a new notification. I'm going to choose workflow. And it's going to give us two options for the notification we want. First one is a formatted, which allows us to use HTML, change our font types, things like that, so we can make our emails look very robust. You can also add things like images to that as well. We also have an option for plain text, which is much simpler. It's very effective for internal notifications and things like that. I'm going to choose formatted. Let's call this one, we'll keep the same theme going. And then I'm going to choose the lifecycle I want to associate this with. And I'll finish that to create the notification. And then this large white window is basically our canvas to create the notification on. So we can add images if we wanted. We could add hyperlinks to the specific workflow queue that the item is in, or a link to the Unity form via like a UPOP link. We could add a table if we're looking to provide multiple updates on specific items, etc. I can also do all that from the right-click option here. On the right in the properties panel, it gives us the subject that we can preface the email with. I'm just going to choose the lifecycle name, the queue that the lifecycle or the item is in, and then I'll say update. If I wanted to archive those notifications in OnBase, I could do that. Just for auditing purposes, just use this checkbox and associate it with the appropriate document type that you've created. The recipients, if I want to have one static recipient, in this case, I'll just use myself. And then if I have any attachments I want to add, I can change this in the settings. Let's just add some basic text here. And then once we're all set, we can publish this. Make sure you save it. And if I wanted to add a comment, just say draft 1. This stays internal. And then our notification is going to just refresh in the repository and we should be good to go. The reason why I chose a formatted notification for this is because I wanted to highlight in the right click, we have an option called versions. And this is very useful if you are making iterations on a notification. As long as it is formatted, the different versions will be stored for you to see. You can see, what I have done and what is currently published. If I ever wanted to revert back to a previous version or see what was done, I can go in here and select these. So notifications, that's the basics of those. Possibilities are pretty endless and very powerful. Prevents a lot of need to stay in your workflows and constantly be monitoring them too when there's new work for someone in the workflow administration team to take care of. All right, so home stretch here. I just have a couple other things I wanted to talk about, and that is the import and export functionality. The import and export feature in Studio is extremely useful when you want to move configured items such as document types, dashboards, workflows, notifications, or forms to a new system. This is not specific to OnBase Studio content. You can do this for document types that you've created in OnBase configuration, or you can do reporting dashboards that you've built in the Unity client. First, let's go over the export feature. You can export items from repositories by going to export in the middle of the home ribbon. Let's select that. And you can export all of these different types of items on the left side of this export window. For this demonstration, we're just going to be exporting the AP invoices by state reporting dashboard. So I'm going to go find that in the reporting dashboards panel. Select that one. It'll show us all of our available dashboards. I'm going to find the one we're looking to move. And I could double click, or I could just use the arrow to move it over to the export side. And then I'm just going to start the export. Once it is finished, we will see all the important information. Any warnings or errors in the bottom window will show up as well. If there was an issue with that export, it would also be highlighted in the red X or the caution sign as well. We can hit the Customize Export button on the bottom right to come to this window and take a look at what items are being exported, and we can edit them accordingly should we need to. Once we're satisfied, we can save the package to any location that we want. Let's just choose the desktop for this, name it something like Dashboard Export, and save it. From there, our dashboard is exported and it's ready to be imported. Now let's talk about the import side of this. Importing is a little bit quicker than the exporting initially. You can just hit the import button on the top ribbon, and then you open the package you want to bring into the system. Let's browse out, find our export. Let's open that up. It's going to load, and then it's going to show us everything that it found on the export that it's looking to bring in. From here, we can choose how we want to bring these items in, whether that's the auto resolution, we can verify the items, or we can edit them on an individual level. We can do a multi-selection and choose one action for all of them. If we wanted to just create them as new items, if we wanted to replace them with the existing items, we could do that as well. Since we're importing to the same system that we exported from, I'm just going to replace them. You can also use that auto resolution feature, override any of the existing actions, or we can just create anything that doesn't have a match. For larger exports, we could use that left-hand window as well to get a little bit more granular in the content that we are importing. So that is the export and the import function. My recommendation when using this is to not do too many items at once. If you are moving multiple workflows, I highly recommend that you export and import one lifecycle at a time. Same thing for something like a WorkView application, because these can get very complicated very quickly. You want to make sure that you're bringing over the exact pieces of data that you're looking to import into the new system. And that's about it. So I wanted to, again, emphasize how powerful of a tool OnBase Studio is. Anyone who's interested in OnBase administration or development should really get familiar with the power that this tool can provide. We've only touched on just a few of the new updates that are available in the latest long-term release of OnBase Foundation and a couple of the previous versions. But if you are interested, I definitely recommend you check out the modular reference guides. If you need assistance with getting those, you can reach out to the support team. We're happy to provide that, as well as take a look at community and Highland's training website. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us today. This presentation was made possible by the Naviant customer success team. If you do have any questions following up on this, please reach out at support@navient.com, and always keep up with what we're doing at our website.